right, viewers, those are the headlines. Our top focus: Polish Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski has now spoken out in support for Ukraine, stating that Western allies must rally behind Ukraine to help them strike back against Russian assets. The Polish Foreign Minister has also warned that Europe must be prepared for Russia to strike deep into the region, calling it irresponsible to not build defenses such as a drone wall on its eastern flank. Listen in to what he has to say.
Need to help Ukraine cope with this. They need generators, they need spare parts for their grid, for their generating, for the electricity plant. And secondly, they desperately need anti-aircraft assets. They need short-term, short-range, medium-range, the full spectrum. And we should also think of consequences for Putin. If he is hitting Ukrainian civilian targets, we should help Ukraine hit back at his military targets.
Meanwhile, Ukraine has claimed to have downed nearly 300 drones and 37 missiles overnight after an attack from Russia had taken place. This marks the latest round of the border aggression in this war. Joining us on the broadcast is Alison Mutler, former Associated Press Bureau Chief in Romania. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. Interesting statement coming in from the Polish Foreign Minister, who has stated that it's necessary to build defenses, including a drone wall on its eastern flank. Up until now, the response that we've seen from NATO nations, despite Operation Eastern Sentry, has been very calibrated, very measured. They've not yet toed the line or engaged with Russia directly. Are they trying to avoid a hot war, and how long can this continue?
I don't think either Russia or NATO countries want a hot war. They don't want to escalate the conflict. But I think NATO and the EU are trying to send a strong message to Russia that they will not be bullied. They will not accept drone incursions or hostile aircraft over their territory, because that seems to be the only language of the Kremlin that Vladimir Putin and his government understand is a stern, strong and firm reaction. So far, it seems to me that the response has been, as you said, not very calibrated. Planes have been used. It's not been very coordinated. And I think the Polish Foreign Minister, who was in Britain yesterday, who is a stern critic of Vladimir Putin, is trying to make sure that the Kremlin understands that NATO members will not accept any attacks on or any violations of its territory, because they know that's the only language that the Kremlin understands is a tough response.
And speaking of a tough response, we're seeing European nations, particularly France in the recent past, it has intercepted a ship that it claims was a part of Russia's shadow fleet transporting oil across the world. Could we then expect other European nations to follow suit, and the thrust of European pressure on Russia then building in the Baltic?
Absolutely. And as I said earlier, while I don't see either side wanting to escalate the war to a hot war, I do see that the conflict has broadened and has become more intense and more aggressive. And it's clear that if Russia does send its submarines, it does send its ships, it does send planes, it does do cyber attacks, then European nations, NATO nations, EU nations do have to respond very firmly, because they have to match the level of attack. And that's what France is doing, and the UK too, I would expect it to do. Germany itself has come out and said we are no longer at peace. The German Chancellor Merz said we are no longer at peace with Russia. So the war, the conflict in Ukraine has escalated and it has broadened, but we're not at a stage of a hot war at the moment.
Indeed, and we're expecting a very crucial meeting in Washington later this week between Donald Trump and Zelensky. Zelensky will also be meeting leaders of defense and tech firms in the United States. He is most likely going to put forward the case for Ukraine gaining access to Tomahawks. Do you think Trump will follow through with this deal?
Trump has been somewhat unpredictable over Ukraine, but he does seem to have changed his tune in recent weeks. He has toughened up his stance. He can see that Putin is making, quite frankly, a mockery of him. So it is possible, but behind the scenes, there must be all kinds of talks and negotiations going on. And maybe there are back channel talks between the US and Russia, because obviously Donald Trump signing off on giving Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine would be another escalation. Of course, Ukraine says they will use it for military targets, but it would be an escalation of the war. And I'm not sure what will happen, but it is possible we will see in the coming days what will be decided.
Indeed. And, we've seen Putin talk tough with regards to the possibility of the US providing Tomahawks to Ukraine. Do you think he'll follow that up with action as well and further escalate this war?
What Putin says and what Putin does are two different things. I remember at the beginning of this conflict covering it from Bucharest and Putin talking about the nuclear threat, and I was talking to diplomats about that, and that was just bravado, showing off. So obviously Russia is worried domestically. You saw there was a protest in St. Petersburg yesterday. They are worried domestically about the effects of this war, because if it begins to affect Russia, I mean, it's already affecting their oil supplies and prices have gone up. If it begins to affect Russia too much, then Putin administration is in danger. And that's what he doesn't want. So Putin is worried about United States providing Ukraine with Tomahawks. But what Putin says and what Putin does, as I said just now, are two different things. But Russia definitely is very worried about this development.
All right, ma'am, with that, I would like to thank you for taking our time, sharing your perspective with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting further east to developments coming in